Well, I want to welcome all of our Atlanta area churches, and for those of you who are watching online and those of you who are watching from all over the country, and if this is your first time to tune in or your first time to join us, this is the best Sunday possible for you to join us or to step into one of our environments or to step into one of our churches, because today we're going to talk a little bit about us. And if you're wondering what is this church about and what is the church that you're sitting in about and what are all these people about, today you're going to find out. And I would say that you're going to get a little peek behind the curtain, but hopefully as a result of our time today, you're going to realize there's no curtain. A couple of years ago, Sandra and I were standing in our kitchen talking about this season of our lives. We're empty nesters, and we're asking the question, what should we do and how do we spend this time and what's the best way to invest this time? And she made a statement that has been something we've gone back to over and over and over. And she asked this question, Andy, she said, here's one way to think about our future. What would we like people to line up at the end of our lives and thank us for? And I've thrown this out to you before in the context of another message series, but this is such an incredible statement because we come back to this all the time. Andy, what would we like as a couple, as a family, what would we like people to line up at the end of our lives to thank us for? In other words, if we're at the end and we're celebrating our lives and our lives together, what is so important to us that we would want to make sure that's the impact that we make on our community, on our friends, or certainly on our family? So today, what I want to do is spend a few minutes and I want to ask this same question, but not about us as a couple or not even about you as an individual, even though it's a great question for you to ask as an individual. I want to ask this question about us collectively. As a group of thousands and thousands of Jesus followers, as a group of extraordinary churches all over the city of Atlanta, what would we like people to line up at the end of our time together and thank us for? Now, if you're new, if you've only been here for a few weeks or you're watching or in one of our churches for the first time, that may seem like a bit of an arrogant question, like, oh, really? Do you think you're going to do something so amazing that people are going to line up and thank you for? It's not an arrogant question. It's actually a responsible question, because whether you're aware of it or not, we as a group of churches all around the city of Atlanta, and even beyond that, but especially in the city of Atlanta, we are actually stewards of extraordinary influence and unprecedented, and I know that's a big word, but I'm going to try to prove it to you in a minute, that we are actually stewards. That is, we hold in our hands extraordinary influence and unprecedented opportunity. And the reason we do is because of what you have done. Because of your participation, because you volunteer, because you're generous, because of what you've done year after year after year, churches all over the country and churches all over the world look to us for answers. They look to us for the way forward. They look to us for what's next. They look for us to help them solve the problems in their communities as they continue to try to be extraordinary churches in their specific location. Which for us is really success, because from the very beginning, 24 years ago next month, we wanted to be a church that served and created a new model for churches. That we wanted to be a church that served as a new model for churches. In other words, we wanted to figure out how to do church a little bit different because the world has changed, and consequently, you've helped us figure that out. And as a result, churches all over the country and all over the world look to us for leadership. Specifically, we wanted to create a church, just one. In the early days, I was just going to be happy if we could figure this out once. We wanted to create a church that unchurched people loved to attend. That unchurched people would show up and they'd say, you know what, I don't know about everything. I don't even know about all the Jesus part, but that was helpful. I don't know about everything they believe, but I'm glad my kids are here. I don't know about everything they believe, but you know what? I know what to do with what I heard. I don't know about that, everything they believe, but those are some of the kindest, friendliest, most sincere people I've ever met in my life. That we wanted to create environments where unchurched people could begin to connect, where doubters and returners and questioners were comfortable expressing their doubts and asking their questions. And consequently, as a result of this hard work and what you've done, we have been successful. You have provided a model for churches. You've provided a new model for churches, a new model that's characterized, and again, you don't think about this because you just show up and do your blocking and tackling and serving and giving, but you've created a church that has then been able to export ideas around a leadership culture. Because typically churches are not a leadership culture. Typically churches are sort of like people standing behind a counter, just waiting for people to come be served. In fact, that's kind of what pastors do. They just wait for somebody to show up with a problem, or wait for somebody that needs a wedding done, or waits for somebody with a question. But we from the very beginning wanted to have a church that was driven by a leadership culture, because leaders get out and figure out what needs to be done and find answers to questions and solve problems. And if something needs to be fixed, they fix it. So you waded in with us into this local community and local communities all over the city and now local communities all over the world and asked the question, what needs to be done? Let's do it. What needs to be fixed? Let's fix it. Who needs to be reached? Let's figure out how to reach them. Also, you've created something that I wasn't sure could ever happen. You've created a multiplication culture. Almost 40 years ago, when I was in seminary, Howard Hendricks, my favorite professor in seminary, one of my top 3 favorite professors, used to say to us all the time, and it was just men at the time, so pardon me, ladies, he would say, gentlemen, it's not enough to add. To be a follower of Jesus, you must multiply. And that just stuck with me, and I thought, is that even possible? Because the whole church world was all about just adding, numbers, add. And I wondered, is it possible to create a church that was driven around multiplication and not simply addition? And you've done it. You have multiplied environments, you've multiplied groups, and you've even multiplied churches. And in fact, our groups culture that we talk so much about, our adult small groups and our children's small groups, our group model has revolutionized hundreds and hundreds, really thousands of churches around the country and thousands of churches around the world, because so many churches had given up on groups. They had adult Sunday school, but the idea of multiplying groups and communities, a lot of churches had given up on it. Nobody had really ever cracked the code on how to make this sustainable, and you have done it, and it has been a game changer for churches all over the country and literally all over the world. Our family ministry model of churches, where we ask adult leaders to stay with their kids through elementary school, to stay with the kids through middle school, to stay with the kids through high school. It's been a game changer for us. It's been a game changer for churches who have embraced that model. Because what happened, instead of having a curriculum content-driven environment for children, it became a relationally driven environment for children. And parents suddenly had a partner in parenting, especially in the middle school and the high school years. But with all of that success, and we've been so successful, I am more aware than ever that we cannot coast because, and I'll try to explain this over the next few minutes, we have way more opportunity than ever, far more opportunity than ever. And the reason is because our Atlanta area churches in particular are located in some of the fastest growing areas of our extraordinary city, which means there are more adults than ever, there are more children than ever. There are more middle school and high school students than ever. Last weekend, I had the opportunity to meet, and I think I might have mentioned this, that I was going to go do this. I had an opportunity to go speak to the seniors in high school, the high school seniors of our Atlanta area churches, just our Atlanta area churches, not high school students, just the seniors. So 634 seniors. They didn't come to a church. They actually spent a weekend together. So if we'd gotten all of them, there would probably be over 1,000. But 630 something high school seniors went on a weekend retreat. And when I got up on stage, it was so overwhelming to me. And I just sat through about 25 minutes of them singing their hearts out. It was incredible. So I got up on stage with my phone and I took this picture. Look at that. These are the high school seniors from, our Atlanta area churches. Isn't that incredible? I mean, talk about influence, right? And week after week after week, we have an opportunity to pour into them. And think about how many other high school seniors that have not connected to the local churches in the Atlanta area that we've created, and these extraordinary environments with these extraordinary leaders that pour into them week after week after week and prepare them for the next season of their life. The other big opportunity we have because of what's happening in Atlanta is the influence we can have with university students. Because of the growth of Kennesaw High School and Georgia State University in particular, and other smaller colleges that have come to the Atlanta area, Atlanta has become a college city. And as a result, we've seen extraordinary growth in our college areas. We have 3 college gatherings every week. And get this, last weekend, the 3 college gatherings combined, the one at Buckhead, Brownsbridge Church, and Woodstock City Church, over 2,000 college students, just college students. That's one of the largest college gatherings of any church anywhere in the country. Here's a picture of Sammer over at Woodstock City teaching. Over 1,000 college students, primarily from Kennesaw State University, showed up, and they show up on a weekend and week out basis for the living room. So this is an extraordinary time for us. And I know we're big, and I know a lot of people don't like big church, but I'll tell you the advantage of a big church. A big church can make a big difference. And if you are a Jesus follower, now if you're not a Jesus follower, you can sit this one out. But if you are a Jesus follower, then it's why I'm more excited than ever. We've not been called to be big, and we've not been called to be comfortable. We have been called to leverage whatever God places in our hand for the sake of what God is doing in the world. And that's why we have an unprecedented opportunity. Let me illustrate it for you. How many of you like maps? Anybody love maps? My wife loves maps. Yes, her hand went up quick. That's right. Some people just love maps. So I'm going to show you a map. Here's a map of the metro Atlanta area. And I want to just show you, based on 20-minute drive times, our unique and unprecedented opportunity in this city. So here's North Point Community Church, 20-minute drive time. Here's Buckhead Church, 20-minute drive time. Here's Woodstock City Church. Or no, excuse me, where are we going next? Sorry, we're going to Brownsbridge Church, 20-minute drive time. Now, sorry, I got it off. Woodstock City Church, 20-minute drive time. Gwinnett Church, 20-minute drive. Since Gwinnett Sugar Hill, 20-minute drive time. Decatur City Church, 20-minute drive time. Gwinnett Hamilton Mill, 20-minute drive time. And for those of you at Hamilton Mill, let me just say, you are I don't know which camera to look at because none of the lights are on. Yeah, there you are. Gwinnett, Hamilton Mill, thank you. What you've done up there is extraordinary. A lot of you left the comfort of Sugar Hill to go help us get started. Others of you have taken a chance on us, and the reports coming back are absolutely amazing. And then, in addition to all that, Chris Patton and his team down on the south side of Atlanta years ago started Southside Church, Peachtree City. Then they planted another church, Southside Church Noonan, and then their latest campus, Southside Church, Henry County. These are all 20-minute drive times, which means we can invite people to church in just about any area or every area of the city of Atlanta, regardless of where they live, and we are the only church in Atlanta that can do that. That is unprecedented influence and unprecedented opportunity, and we must be good stewards with this. And when somebody says, yeah, but I work here, but I live in Gwinnett County, no problem. You got to go to Gwinnett Church. Well, I work here, but I live out in Alpharetta, no problem. You can go to North Point Community Church. Well, I live way north. I know, we got you covered, Brownsbridge Church. You just can't escape us, okay? So there's no excuse, all right? And the preaching is mediocre at all of them, right? But so the point is this is an unprecedented opportunity. And again, it's not just an unprecedented opportunity in a city. The city of Atlanta and the surrounding area is a very important part of our country. You know this. It's a strategic city. It's a diverse city. It's an important city. So for the next about 10 minutes, I just want to dream with you a little bit about what could be and what I'm convinced absolutely should be. So let's go back to the question that I asked earlier. Oh, and then after we dream a little bit, I'm going to ask you to do something. I'm going to ask you to do one thing that I'm convinced will change everything. One thing that will change everything for somebody. But anyway, back to my original question. So we're all sitting on the front porch. I don't know how this works. It's a very large front porch. We're all sitting on the front porch, and the whole thing's over. All of this, for whatever reason, has gone away, and we're celebrating our years of service together and our years of doing church together, and people are lining up to thank us. And if I could dream a little bit, and if I could have my way, if I could write the script, here's what I would want our contribution to be to our community, what our contribution would be to our city, what our contribution would be to the local church, and our contribution would be to the global church everywhere in the world where people gather in Jesus' name. And your list may look different, but here's what I dream about. A world where the church is considered an essential part of every community. A world that when people start new churches or they find out there's a new church in their community or their town, that even if they're not church people, they're like, I'm so glad there's a church in our community. I'm so glad there's a new church in our community. I dream of a time when the reputation of the local church is so good and so healthy that people would consider it to be a loss in their community if a church were to shut down or to move out. And I tell you where you've made an extraordinary difference in this way. Be Rich, our Be Rich campaign, you have planted that flag. I'm telling you, every time we plant a new church in the community, one of the first things that team of staff does is they go to the rock star charities and the rock star nonprofits, the nonprofits that are knocking it out of the park, either faith-based or non-faith-based. We don't discriminate. We look for the charities that are doing a great job with children and homelessness and whatever kinds of addictions. We just find the best nonprofits, and we go to them and we say, hey, we're coming to your community. How can we help? How can we serve? How can we raise money? How can we create volunteers for you? So consequently, in all of these areas and all of these churches that you've helped create, these communities are glad you are there, and they would be poorer, and not as well off if you weren't there doing what you're doing in those local communities. And Be Rich has allowed us to raise millions and millions and millions of dollars and give it away to say to the community, look, we're not here for something for us. We are here for you. But imagine a world where that was the reputation of the local church, that every single community was richer because the church was there. And people, even non-church people, were happy that the church was in their community. The other cool thing is this fall, when we do Be Rich again, we're gonna be joined by 70 other churches around the country who are embracing this Be Rich model. And beyond that, there are dozens of churches that have copied the Be Rich model. They branded it something else for their community, but they are planting the flag of we want the community to be better because we are here. And you have helped start that ball rolling, and you have helped make that difference because of your generosity through Be Rich and because of your vision and your compassion for your local community. The second thing, if we could dream together, is this: a world where people skeptical of what we believe are envious of how well we treat each other and amazed at how well we treat them. A world where people who are skeptical of what we believe are envious of how well we treat each other and actually amazed at how well we treated them. This captured the attention of the world once upon a time. This is what caused the Roman Empire to finally give up on its pagan ways and embrace Christianity. And if it happened once, I'm absolutely convinced it can happen again. Love and unconditional love and acceptance must be the brand of the local church. And my vision for us as we continue to impact other churches, and my vision for the churches, that one day that would be our brand again. Because Jesus, with everything else he said, he only said this about one thing. He was so specific. On the night that he was arrested, as he shared kind of his parting words with his apostles, he said, look, by this, all men and women, by this, everyone in the community, by this, everyone in the world will know that you're my follower. By how you love one another. A new command I give you. You are to love one another, not as you want to be loved, not as you've been loved, not as you imagine being loved. You are to love one another the way that I have loved you. And by that kind of love, by that brand, by that trademark, that's how people are going to know that you are my disciple, by the way that you love one another. Because that kind of love paves the way to influence. And that kind of love opens people up to the gospel. And that kind of love is actually what every single human being on the planet ultimately wants. And that's what was modeled for us in the gospel, and that's what we've been called to do. And I just envision a world where when people think Christian, they don't think yuck. And when people think Christian, they don't think legalism. And when people think Christian, they don't think all the negative things and all the stereotypes. When they think Christian, they think, wow, I don't know if I want to be one. I sure hope my daughter marries one, because those Christian men know how to honor a woman. I don't know if I'd ever want to be one, but I certainly hope my son marries one. They are the finest people I've ever met. Those Christians, they believe some strange things, but I tell you what, I hire all of them I can because they are the most honest, hardworking people you can imagine. I'm not sure I'd ever want to be one, but I love working for one, because she is the most extraordinary manager. She's the most extraordinary boss I've ever worked for. I feel like she genuinely cares about me and cares about my family. Imagine a world like that. That's what Jesus had in mind. That's why he said, this is how they're gonna know that you're my follower, by your love for one another. And then this, a world where people want the message of Jesus to be true before they believe it's true. A world where the way the gospel is presented from the local church and from the people who preach and teach and small group leaders and people who share, that the gospel would be presented in such a way that when people hear it, they would want it to be true, even before they're convinced it's true. Because when the message of Jesus is clear, it is compelling. Who doesn't want there to be justice for the people who have been treated unjustly? And if there is no eternity, there is no justice, because we know there is no ultimate justice in this life. Who would not want there to be the God of creation to have invited them to call him Heavenly Father? The perfection of the idea of father, not because God is a man, but because a perfect father is perhaps the best picture of what God is like. Who doesn't want to think that there's eternity, that they're going to see loved ones again? And I could go on and on and on. And when the message of Jesus is clear, it is compelling. And I dream of a world where people are so focused on what the gospel is really about instead of what people have made it about, that they would want it to be true, even before they're convinced it's true. Jesus made this remarkable statement. Luke records it for us. It's so rich, it's so packed. It's one of those things you never hear preached about because it seems a little bit confusing, but it's so extraordinary. I think Jesus was imagining the future beyond his death, beyond his resurrection, and he made this extraordinary statement. He said, the law and the prophets, that's what they called the Old Testament in the first century. The law and the prophets, the teaching of Moses, were proclaimed until John, talking about John the Baptist. But when Jesus stepped on the pages of history, everything began to change. He said, the law and the prophets were proclaimed until John. Since that time, the good news of the kingdom of God is being preached, and everyone is forcing their way into it. It was his way of saying, when people understand what I'm offering, when people understand who I represent, when people understand the future I envision for them, when people understand the value system that I'm bringing to planet Earth, people are going to want it to be true even before they're convinced it's true. And if those three things are our contribution to our community, and if those three things are our contribution to the church at large, and if those three things are our contribution to the people that we know, we will leave the world in a better place, and we will leave the church better off than the way that we found it. So I am more committed, and I am more excited, and I am more passionate about our unprecedented opportunity than I have ever been before. And I'm more committed than ever to helping you and partnering with you to inspire people to follow Jesus. And why not? Because Jesus, think about it, because Jesus brought the kingdom of God to earth, and everyone is invited to participate in it. Now, here's the thing. As I said earlier, you're busy, right? I mean, you're trying to spend time with kids. You're trying to, have kids. You're trying to get married. You're dating. You're doing jobs. I mean, you're busy, busy people. And it's my job, and it's your lead pastor's job, and it's our staff's job to kind of keep all the organizational plates spinning. And we're going to keep doing that. But there is something you can do. There is one simple thing. There is just one thing that could possibly change everything for somebody. In fact, this one thing is the thing that perhaps changed everything for you somebody. And that one thing is simply this. We must, as a group of Atlanta area churches in particular, for our sake, for our community's sake, and for the sake of all the churches that look to us for leadership, we must re-embrace the one behavior. We must re-embrace the one habit that made all of this possible to begin with. We must re-embrace that one habit that enabled us to accomplish everything we've accomplished. And that one behavior, that one habit really serves as what I call a keystone habit. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this phrase, but a keystone habit is a habit that affects everything. A keystone habit is a habit that has a cascading effect throughout a person's life or throughout a business or throughout an organization or even throughout a nation or throughout a culture. For example, a keystone habit would be recording everything that you eat. If you record everything you eat, it's a keystone habit, because if you stop and record everything you eat, you think more about what you eat. Then you eat better. Then you exercise more. And when you exercise more, you get healthier. And now you're becoming more and more aware of what you're putting in your body, so you're more careful about what you put in your body, and you begin to sleep better. When you sleep better, you do better at work. When you do better at work, you make more money, and your kids love you. So it's a cascading effect, okay? So it's a keystone habit. Another keystone habit, this is an interesting one, is for families with kids to eat dinner around the table at home 4 or 5 nights a week. It's a keystone habit. Research has shown families that do this, they have better communication, they have better relationships, the kids spend less time on homework, and they make better grades, and they get scholarships, and everybody's happy. It's a keystone habit. So in family life, in personal life, and organizational life, there are keystone habits. And when a group of people focus on the keystone habit, it has a trickle down, a cascading effect. It affects everything. And I'm convinced because of what we have seen happen and because of the past, that our organization, our group of churches, there is actually a keystone habit. And if you will personally embrace this, it will affect everything, and it will affect you, and it's gonna make an extraordinary difference in the life of at least one other person. And the way we used to talk about this back in the old days when we first started our organization is we called it invest and invite. Invest and invite. This is the keystone habit. This is how we got to where we are. This is the key to influence. This is the key to being the church that God has called us to be. Invest and invite. And the way it works is this. It's not complicated. You just love your friends, and you love your neighbors, and you love your coworkers, and then when the time is right, you invite them to church. You just love the people around you, and then when the time is right, you invite them to church. And to be clear, not because they're projects. They're not projects. People aren't projects. People are people. The reason you invite them to church is the same reason you invite them to your favorite restaurant. You don't want them to miss out, right? And I'm telling you, some of you know this better than others, these environments that you've created, these environments that you've paid for, these extraordinary environments that you volunteer in, they are some of the best kept secrets in Atlanta. Last week, in Transit, that's our middle school environment. In Transit, we talked to middle school students about the fact that they're all leaders to some respect, and they all have influence. And the whole talk was about how to leverage your influence to make the world better and to make your friends better, and how to figure out what you're good at and how to leverage your influence. And don't think about yourself as a victim. Think about yourself as an influencer. And there was a mom in our church, and here's what she said to me. She said, Andy, she said she's a mom, and she also serves in Transit. She said, I don't care what a parent believes. Every single parent wants their kid to go to school, especially middle school, thinking, I'm an influencer, how can I influence people for good? I'm an influencer, how can I influence people for good? And then, after Transit, every parent gets a little card emailed to them or handed to them, 3 questions to keep the conversation going on at home. Is there a parent of a middle schooler anywhere that would not want somebody else talking to their student about how to leverage their influence at school and at home, and then have somebody follow up and say, parents, here's 3 questions you can ask your kids over dinner to keep that conversation going? I mean, is there a parent in Buckhead that doesn't want that, or Roswell that doesn't want that, or Woodstock? This is a best kept secret. We have another extraordinary environment some of you don't know about. It's called Canopy. Canopy is the best place in Atlanta for singles to meet other singles. It's called Canopy. It is a citywide initiative that comes out of Buckhead Church where people meet each other around hobbies, things they have in common, cooking, hiking, biking. It goes on and on and on. And then 3 or 4 times a year, they have a 3-part series where they sing together, and somebody comes in and talks specifically about issues that singles are wrestling with. And this is for the whole city. I mean, why wouldn't we want every single person in Atlanta, every single single to know about Canopy and be a part of that? And if you want to know more about it, it's canopysocial.com, canopysocial.com, canopysocial.com. The point is, I could go on and on and on. In fact, this Tuesday night at Buckhead Church, 7:30, this Tuesday night is right in the middle of one of the Canopy Stages series where we're going to gather singles from all over the city. I mean, we have some of the best kept secrets. And the only evangelists for these extraordinary environments that make such a difference in the lives of people are us. And there's a whole lot of us. So invest and invite. But because of this, we're going to take it up a couple of notches, okay? And I'll never ask you to do something that I'm not already doing, so I'm way ahead of you on this. And here's the couple of notches we're going to take it up on. We're not just going to simply invest and invite with the people we know in our neighborhoods and the people we work with. We're going to all develop the keystone habit of inviting strangers to church, okay? We're all going to invite strangers to church. Whenever you hear anyone, I'm going to come back to this, and I'm going to give you this as you're on your way out today, so you'll have it written down. Whenever you run into anybody that's a victim of what we call one of the 3 knots, whenever you hear a story, I mean, you're sitting in a booth, and you hear somebody talking in the other booth, everybody's fair game, okay? You just say, excuse me, then you lean over the booth and say, so here are the 3 knots. Whenever you run into anybody who's not in church, things are not going well, or something happened they're not prepared for. Not in church, not going well, not prepared for. Not in church, we don't really go to church. Or we just moved to the city, haven't found a church. Not going well. Things aren't going well with my middle school or my high school. Things aren't going well in my marriage. Things aren't going well at work. Not prepared for. We had our first child, and we thought we had it, and then they let us go home with it. And we realized we are not prepared for this, right? We were so happy to get pregnant, and then we found out it was twins. Or, we got pregnant and then there's complications and we just weren't prepared for that. Or we got married and my parents said, you need to talk to somebody. We don't need to talk to somebody. We're in love. We're not prepared. Whenever you hear not in church, not going well, not prepared, you know what you're going to do? We're going to say, hey, you should come to my church. You should come to my church. Sandra and I have been doing this for a long time, and we have some amazing stories. Her stories are better than mine. She's better at this than me, but it's just so funny to just interrupt the conversation and say, well, you should come to my church. You should just come to my church. My church is an answer for all of these, right? And you know what? That sounds like an exaggeration. Every single one of us in this room, every single one of us watching, every single one of us listening has a story from our personal lives where we were the victim of one of these three things, and something about the message of Jesus and something about the gospel and something or somebody we met in church fulfilled or answered or intersected with the fact that things weren't going well or things we weren't prepared for. So absolutely, hey, you should come to church with me. And then we're going to take it up even another notch. And this is where it gets so much fun, okay? Inviting someone to church has never been more fun than what I'm about to ask you to do. I'm going to give you the specific invitation I want you to extend to people. Again, we've been doing this for a while. And the specific invitation is this: come sit with me. Let's just say this. All of our churches, even folks watching online, out loud together. Ready? Come sit with me. One more time. Not, well, you should visit our church sometime. We're not doing that anymore. We don't have time for that. Or, hey, you should check us out. See ya. Nope. We're not doing that anymore. We're going to look them right in the eye. Now, you got to be sensitive. You got to be careful. Don't do anything silly or dangerous. But for the most part, it's not going to be silly or dangerous. You just look at them and say, hey, I want you to come sit with me. Come sit with me. So about 2.5 months ago, I committed to our staff every single week, I'm going to invite somebody to come sit with me. Got a couple right here on the front row. We met on Twitter somehow. I just decided I'm just going to invite people to church. So I've invited all kind of crazy people. And when I say come sit with me, they're like, with you? I'm like, yeah, I'm not sitting on the front row. I can save seats, okay? Just come sit with me. So let's say it one more time together. Ready? Come sit with me. See, that's not hard. Now, most people are going to say, nah, I don't know, but that's okay. Not, we're going to check it out sometime, or yeah, we got like 25 churches. You can find one. See ya. Did my duty. No. Come sit with me. And here's the thing. Why not? You're amazing. You're amazing. I mean, and if you volunteer, you say, well, I can't have people sit with me. I volunteer. You just phone in, text in, email in, say, hey, somebody's going to sit with me. We'll find somebody to cover for you. Because this is our unprecedented opportunity. We're the only ones that have this opportunity in the city, and we are going to take advantage of it. Now, one more thing. I want to make this even easier for you, okay? I want to give you, and you don't have to use this. You may think this is kind of corny or tacky, but this will work. I want to give you an elevator pitch. Not a sales pitch. We're not selling anything, okay? This is the elevator pitch. In other words, why should anybody come to your church? Why should anybody ever come to church with you? So I'm going to give you a simple answer. You may have your own. You tell somebody, hey, you should come sit with me. And they, what's your church about? Okay, what's the name of it again? What kind of church is it? Or honestly, I would rather chew on glass than go to church. I mean, there's all kinds of responses when you talk about church. I get that. So here's your response. Well, if the best way to describe our church, it's kind of like this. You know how life is complicated, and you want to get it right, and we want to help. Life is complicated, and we both got kids. Parenting is so complicated, yeah. And you want to get it right. I want to get it right. At Buckhead Church, we just want to help. Life is complicated. I know when you're talking about the thing going on with your marriage. Marriage is complicated, but you want to get it right. And at Woodstock City Church, we just want to help. Life's complicated. I mean, school's complicated and work, and you got student loans. It's complicated. But, you want to get this right. Don't we? Everybody wants to get it right. You know what? At Brownsbridge Church, we just want to help. So come sit with me. Life is complicated. You want to get it right. We want to help. Come sit with me. It's that simple. This isn't an add-on. This is our stewardship. This is our responsibility. Is this important? Yeah, it's real important. Because the question is, will we or won't we? Will we or won't we be good stewards of this extraordinary, unprecedented opportunity? Will we or won't we be good stewards of our more than ever opportunity? An opportunity to inspire more people than ever to follow Jesus almost anywhere in the city. And I say yes, because after all, somebody invited you, right? Aren't you glad somebody invited you? Aren't you glad that when you said no, they asked you again? Aren't you glad that when you said no, they stuck that stupid thing in your mailbox? Aren't you glad that when you said no, they said, okay, what about your kids? Aren't you glad that when you said no, they asked your wife? Aren't you glad that they just kept coming after you and finally you said yes and then you came and you realized they're not all freaks and I didn't see any snakes. I think it's safe. A keystone habit changes everything. A keystone habit affects everything. And I'm telling you, come sit with me will change everything for somebody. And it will change our church for you, and I'll tell you how. Because when you are sitting with somebody who's with us for the very first time, it will impact how you serve, it will impact how you sing, it will impact how you give, and it will impact how you evaluate. Because if you've never had the thrill, if you've never faced the angst of sitting through one of our services with somebody who's far from God or not a church person, and suddenly you're hearing the songs through their ears, you're listening to the sermon through their ears, you're seeing the building through their eyes, that's how we continue to evaluate, not adequately, that's how we evaluate appropriately and accurately when we think about what we're trying to do. And you help us, and you help you, and you help somebody else when you decide, you know what? I'm gonna listen for the 3 nights. And when I hear them, I'm gonna invite somebody to come sit with me. It will keep us focused on what we've been called to do. It will keep us focused on our mission to inspire people to follow Jesus. After all, think of what your Heavenly Father did for you. After all, we are here because God sent his Son into this world. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And Jesus introduced the kingdom of God, the kingdom values of God, where everybody has a value. And he said everyone is invited to participate in it. So this week, you're gonna run across someone who makes it clear that I'm not a church person, I don't go to church. You're gonna run across somebody who wasn't prepared for something, and you're gonna run across somebody for whom things, they just aren't going well. And you're gonna say, you know what, I get it. Life is complicated. And I know you want to get it right. We all want to get it right. Maybe our church can help. Come sit with me. One more time all together. Come sit with me. Hey, at this time, someone from your local church is going to come up and talk a little bit more about next steps for your local community and what's coming up for you guys next week. So they'll come at this time, and then we'll close our service in just a minute.
So I don't know about you, as you sit there and you watch Andy put that map up, how many of you were waiting for him to head east just a little bit? Yeah, me too. And here's why we don't end up on that map, if you've ever wondered that. Andy was talking about primarily the campuses that are in the Atlanta area, and the campuses are all a part of one church, North Point Community Church. They have several different names, but they're all a part of one church. But at the same time as there are those campuses in Atlanta, there are more than 96 North Point partner churches all across the U.S. Take a look at this map. 96 partner churches across the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. We were number 19 of those partner churches, and partner churches share a common mission, vision, and values, but we have our own leadership and our own finances, so we are an independent church just with shared values. And so that's why we don't end up on that particular map that Andy was talking about. So our focal point isn't Atlanta, although many of us do various parts of our lives in Atlanta. Our focal point instead is on Georgia's Lake Country, which has more than 100,000 people between Greensboro, Madison, Eatonton, and Milledgeville. 100,000 people that is our area to reach with the message of Jesus Christ and a Heavenly Father that loves absolutely and unconditionally. And so for us, a number of years ago, we began Load In, Load Out portable in the movie theater. And after several years, we were able this year to open the first permanent location of Lake Oconee Church in Georgia's Lake Country. And we were also able to help create a small group of people, a core team of people who are right at this moment meeting in Madison, in Morgan County High School, and they are creating this same environment and experience. And you may say, well, why don't they just drive to Lake Oconee because there's a building already there? And the reason for that is because church people, Jesus followers, they will drive 30, 35 minutes to go to a church. But if you're going to invite someone to come sit with me, somebody who doesn't like to go to church, that person isn't going to be very inclined to drive 30 or 40 minutes to get to church. And so by creating a location in a community where people can say, hey, I'll come with you, I'll sit beside you, that's what's happening in Madison right now as well. So we look at Greensboro, Eatonton, Madison, and Milledgeville, Georgia's Lake Country, and we're the North Point partner that is reaching those communities with the message of our Heavenly Father. And here's the thing. We are far from done. With over 100,000 people, there's a lot of people that you know, people that are close to you but far from God, people that would say, hey, you do what you want on Sunday morning, but I'm not interested in going to church, in large part because they've never experienced one that allowed them to encounter God at their own speed. And so that is an opportunity that we create. And so there are people that you know right now who are not in church someplace, but instead they're on the lake or on the golf course or on the couch somewhere. And we have the opportunity to say, hey, come and see, come along with me, come sit with me and hear and see what this is all about. This is why so many of you have invited people to come. You have given so that this mission continues to go forward. You've joined a serve team and you've begun to volunteer so that other people can come and see. You've joined a small group so that you can continue to grow in your faith and be a part of someone else's. Because we're convinced that God has put us here so that we can inspire people to follow Jesus, so that we can create a different kind of church for Georgia's Lake Country. A church where even our friends who don't really like church would love to attend because they find it helpful and they find it engaging in their life and in their process. And so we're going to lean into that keystone habit, that habit of inviting people that we know and people that we don't know, and inviting them to come and see. And so to make that even easier for you this morning, as you leave, you're going to get one of these cards. They'll give them to you at the door as you head out, and it summarizes a lot of what Andy's talked about today. On the back, it has not in church, not going well, not prepared for. This is kind of your reminder card of some of the things that you've heard today. And in addition to that, you're also going to receive one of these, either a magnet, or if your car's like mine, there are parts of it where you just can't stick a magnet. It doesn't work anymore. So you get one of these stickers that you can put in the window, and both of them accomplish the same purpose. Because as many of us drive through our communities, people have seen T-shirts, maybe they've seen a sign that says Love in the Lake Country, but when they see these on our cars, it creates a conversation. And conversations lead to invitations. And somebody sees the Love in the Lake Country, they ask you what that's about, and it creates a perfect opportunity to say, well, life is complicated, and we all want to get it right. And at my church, we just want to help, and that's my church. And that gives you an opportunity to invite somebody to come sit with me. Come sit with me on a Sunday morning. So as you leave today, you'll receive one of these and your choice of a magnet or a sticker for your car window. But I'd encourage you to be aware as you head into the course of this week of who can you invite to come sit with you.